Storytime, my best friend set me up to get jumped. So a little background information, I was 14 at the time and a freshman in high school, and I've been best friends with this girl who we're gonna call Lindsay for a little less than a year, which is not a long time, but it felt like we've known each other since birth. The only annoying thing about her was that she desperately wanted to be popular, to the point where she would embarrass herself just to get the popular kids to like her, which obviously never worked. Fast forward to high school, Lindsay meets a group of senior girls, who I guess you would call the hot Cheeto girls, and she immediately starts dressing and acting just like them, and she started acting super weird towards me. Well, eventually Lindsay introduces me to them, and I actually liked them. I thought that they were funny and nice. But the problems began whenever they started paying more attention to me than they were Lindsay. You could tell that she was pissed off with this because she was dressing and acting like them, trying to fit in. Meanwhile, there's me who didn't change anything about myself for them to like me. Fast forward, the one night I'm on the phone with Lindsay and she goes, "I don't think I like them anymore. They're super rude." And then she told me that the main girl of the group, Sierra, was talking shit on me and wanted to fight me. Like, story time about how my boyfriend got my best friend pregnant. So a little background information, I was around 16 or 17 at this time and I was in 11th grade. And I met my best friend, who we're going to call Jasmine, whenever I was 9. We met through our moms because my mom worked at a detox hospital and her mom, Carol, was a patient there. And Jasmine has a brother who we're going to call Zane, who's a year older than us. Well, at the start of 11th grade, I was not popular, but Jasmine was. In my art class, I had met this kid who we're going to call Warren. Warren wasn't popular at all, and he was super shy, so we hit it off. Well, fast forward, in the middle of the year, I joined the lacrosse team with Jasmine, but I was super upset because I felt like we were drifting apart. Now, Jasmine had a lot of boyfriends. Me, on the other hand, the only kid that I liked was Warren, and we started dating. But it definitely felt like Jasmine had a thing for Warren because she would flirt with him all the time. And whenever I asked her if she did, she said that I was overreacting because I was on my period. Like, okay. Fast forward to our last lacrosse game of the year. Our school decided to have a sleepover, like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend got my best friend pregnant. So like I said, after the last lacrosse game, we were having a sleepover for the 11th and 12th graders, and Jasmine and Warren didn't have cars, so I drove them. But I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit thrown off, because Jasmine showed up in this mini skirt and this tiny tube top. Meanwhile, it's like 55 degrees outside. Well, fast forward, I go and walk down to the bathroom, and then I see Jasmine coming out of the boys' bathroom with her skirt partially unzipped. So after she walks away, I go in there and I see Warren zipping up his pants. Of course, whenever I confronted him, he denied it. So then I asked Jasmine, and then she casually said that they had been hooking up in the bathroom. Fast forward a little bit later, I get a text from her saying, "Emergency, I think I'm pregnant." So I go to her house and she tells me that the baby's Warren's. So I smack her and then she tries to fight me, but I'm not a fighter, so I ran. Fast forward, somehow Zane and I start dating. Fast forward, the one day I'm at his house, and out of the corner of my eye, I see Jasmine running towards me, about to jump on me. So I move out of the way, she lands on her stomach. Then we see a ton of blood and she goes to the hospital and she lost the babies. Storytime about why situationships are the worst. So a little background information, it was the summer before my sophomore year in college and I was 19 years old, and I've been talking to this guy who we're gonna call Brent. Now, Brent and I have been talking for 3 months, and at first everything was perfect. I really thought we were on the road to a healthy relationship. But then after the first month, everything went to shit. Every other week, he would become super distant. And when I say every other week, I mean it was like a set schedule. He would stop answering my text messages, stop returning my calls without any explanation at all. And then randomly, a week later, he would be like, "Sorry, I was going through some things. And I love the relationship that we have, and I wouldn't ever want to put any of my problems onto you." And he would constantly give me false hope of us being in a relationship. I must have been in a trance or something, because when it came to this man, all my common sense went out the window. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how somebody stole my $12,000 dog at my house party. So like I said, I had to call my parents and they got the cops called on the house so that way I could get everybody that I did not know out of the freaking house. Thankfully, my friends and I hadn't started drinking yet because literally 5 minutes after my friends showed up, random people started showing up in big groups. So after everybody clears out, I go to walk upstairs and I have my keys in my hand ready to unlock the door. The door was literally busted open. Like somebody had to have kicked the doorknob because the frame was cracked, the door was cracked, it was bad. So I'm freaking out. I wasn't even thinking about my dog at the time until my friend Kirsten asked to see my new puppy. Because Kirsten had just got home from college and she had only ever seen the dog over FaceTime. So we're searching all over the house and we cannot find my fucking dog. Well, when my parents got home that night, they pretty much grounded me for life. But then I want to say a month later, my friend Jake, who was there that night, called me freaking the fuck out. Like for part 3. Part 3 about how my $12,000 dog got stolen at my house party. So like I said, we couldn't find Mimi. My parents pretty much grounded me for life. I get a call from my friend Jake, who was there that night, the night of the party. And he's like flipping out. He's like, I think I know who took Mimi, aka my dog. So I'm like freaking out. I go into the kitchen, I put him on speakerphone so that way my parents can hear. And he was like, well, my girlfriend Avery has this one girl who was at the party that night on Snapchat. And I was like, okay, and what the fuck about it? And he was like, well, the one night we were laying in bed together and she was going through people's Snapchat stories and then she got onto this girl's private story. And I told her, that's my friend's dog, the one that got stolen. So then we looked her up on Instagram, we went on her Visco, and she has a crap ton of pictures of your dog on her Visco. So somehow his girlfriend Avery finds this girl's address. My parents were like, oh, we want to call the police. Somehow I talked them out of doing that. Long story short, I went to her house, I got my dog back after telling her parents about it, but when I was leaving, I ran over her. Story time about my toxic best friend group. So a little background information. I was 16, and it was the end of 9th grade going into summer break. And one day randomly, these 3 girls added me on Snapchat and put me into a group chat. Now, I had seen them around school, but I never said hi to them. I was finding it very hard to make friends in 9th grade because everybody was so toxic. Anyways, like I said, they added me to a group chat, and all of them said hi to me. And usually I wouldn't respond to random people on Snapchat, but because I had seen them around school, I decided why not. And it was so random. They just started sending pictures of themselves into this group chat. And it low-key made me feel bad because I kind of hated my physical appearance. But anyways, they asked me if I wanted to be friends with them. Oh, and by the way, their names were Stacy, Savannah, and Emily. So of course I said yeah because it was hard for me to make friends. So fast forward, my birthday was coming up. So they asked me if we could hang out. They said they wanted to give me an early birthday present. So I said yes, of course. Like for part 2. Story time about the worst day of my life. So a little background information. I was 16 at the time, and I was either in 8th grade or 9th grade, but I really don't remember. And I had this boyfriend who we are going to call Cameron. We had been dating for 3 years, but before him and I got together, we were best friends. Well, I also was in a friend group with myself, Amber, and this girl named Sky. Now, I wouldn't really call Sky a pick-me girl. She was more of the jealous best friend. For example, the one day we went shopping for dresses, and I picked this one out that I really liked and that looked super good on me. Amber was like, OMG, you look so beautiful. And then Sky, she was like, that dress is ugly and it makes you look fat. Well, after that, I told her I didn't care what she said and that I was going to get the dress anyways. Well, she didn't like the fact that I wasn't going to listen to her, so she didn't talk to me for 2 whole weeks. And then after, she texted me saying that she forgives me, even though I didn't apologize, but okay. Well then, me being stupid, I introduced her to my boyfriend. Bad idea, like for part 2. Part 2 about the worst day of my life. So like I said, me being stupid, I introduced her to my boyfriend. Well, after that, Cameron started acting really weird. Like him and I, we would literally hang out with each other 24/7. And now he was always too busy for me and we would only talk at school. And because I was in all the smart classes and stuff, I would go over to his house to tutor him. Because, you know, I was like the one who was winning every single fucking award for being smart. Well, I came over on the day that I would usually tutor him. And when I went over there, his mom was like, oh, he's busy. He's out with his friends. So then I went home and I got bored and I opened Instagram. Well, I see that he's at a party with Sky and they didn't even invite me. So I asked him about it, and he said, oh, it was her and her boyfriend's party. So I was like, that wasn't really an excuse for why you didn't invite me. So he apologized and I forgave him. Well, 5 weeks later, I found out that him and her did the nasty, and she got pregnant. And then there was a rumor going around that they made out in the bathroom. So I blocked both of them and never saw them again. Story time about how my husband accidentally told me that he was cheating on me. So just some background information. My husband and I got engaged 2 years ago. And this whole situation happened a month after we got married. So fast forward, it's a Sunday morning. Well, usually every week on Sunday, I clean the whole house. So I woke up, went into the bathroom to take my ring off, and I could not get it off. Mind you, I had gained a little bit of weight since my husband and I got engaged. Anyways, I tried butter, I tried soap, I tried everything, even oil. So after trying to get it off for an hour straight, my finger was 3 times bigger than it usually is. So at this point, I'm really scared that I'm going to have to get it cut off. Because 1, I didn't want to ruin it. And 2, it was really expensive. So I call my husband and he's like, oh, call your dad. Firefighters always know what to do. So I called my dad and thank God he lived 5 minutes away because he drove over really quickly. Like for part 2. Story time about how my best friend and I were dating the same guy. So a little background information, I was 15 and it was my freshman year of high school. And I had been dating this guy for 3 months who we're going to call Jacob. He was a part of the popular group and was known for cheating on all his past girlfriends. But why would I see that as a red flag? Because I'm fucking dumb. Anyways, Of course he was cheating on me too, and people would tell me that. At first I wanted to leave him, but the problem was he came from a super rich family and he was really cute. So in reality, I really only wanted to stay with him so that way he would keep spoiling me with expensive gifts. He would literally buy me anything and everything I wanted. So my best friend, who we can call Taylor, she came over for a sleepover. The whole night we talked about Jacob cheating on me, and she asked me why I had not broken up with him yet. So I told her why I wouldn't leave, and then she hyped me up. She was like, period sis, do what you gotta do. Well, then I came up with this super good plan for my best friend and I both to get gifts from him and use him. So then I came out and I said, you should be his side chick. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my best friend and I were dating the same guy. So like I said before, he was cheating on me 24/7, but he was spending money on me 24/7. That's the reason why I wouldn't leave him. So then I told my best friend that she should be his side chick. So that way we could both use him for his money. So Taylor started flirting with him to try and make him want her too. And I may have given it a little push by giving her his Snapchat, so she tried to slide in his DMs and then also tried texting him on Snapchat. At first, his cheating ass did not want to do anything with her. And I was like, the one time. Anyways, he was like, I'm with your best friend right now. I don't think we should do this. But of course, like all boys who cheat, he ended up meeting up with her. And they started sneaking around. Meanwhile, I knew all the tea. Taylor was telling me everything. Taylor started getting things from him 24/7 and he looked so stupid. Well, then we decided to fuck with him one more time. Like for part 3. Story time about how my best friend and I were dating the same guy at the same time. So like I said, she was sneaking around with him. Meanwhile, she was telling me everything. He was buying her gifts, he was buying me gifts, so everything was perfect. But we had one little trick left up our sleeves. We decided that we would both make a wish list and put everything that we wanted on there. And at the end of the month, we would have a sleepover, bring everything that we got. Well, on the night of the sleepover, we brought everything, and let me tell you, this filled up my king-size bed. There was stuff all on the floor. So what did I do? I took a video of it, and I uploaded it to Instagram, tagging him and his friends, and wrote a long-ass caption, basically saying, if you cross me, this is what will happen. You'll get played. He was so embarrassed, his friends and everyone at school basically laughed at his dumb ass. Well, he ended up telling his mommy about it, and they came and talked to my parents, and they pretty much just told them to get the fuck over it, like your son did what he did willingly. She didn't do anything wrong. She meaning me. My dad was kind of mad at me, but my mom was super impressed about it, and we laugh about it all the time. Story time about why my mom kicked me out when I was 16. So a little background information. This had all started as soon as my dad left my mom and I. I was like 13 around the time. Well, ever since then, my mom would have different guys in and out of the house all the time. Like, we were lucky if a month went by and she was still with the same dude. Which, I mean, I kind of get it because my dad did leave us for a woman that he had started another family with. But at the same time, it was just a whole mess. Anyway, so she had got with this new guy, and we're gonna call him Tyler. And by the way, the dudes that she would date, they would literally live at our house. Anyway, so a week after he moved in, I started getting really close to him, which usually never happens. Usually I would try to keep my distance because I knew how wrong it was of her having all these different guys in the house when I'm only 16. Anyways, every time that my mom would go to work, he would invite me to go see a movie, and he would just be really flirty with me. And he was only 6 years older than me, and my mom was 32. You do the math. Anyways, like for part 2. Part 2 about why my mom kicked me out when I was 16. So like I said, the guy was being super flirty with me, inviting me to the movies when my mom wasn't home and all that stuff. Well, then it led to more than just that. By the way, this guy did not have a job, so he was home with me 24/7. And I was doing online school. So we were in the house by ourselves, 12 hours a day, 5 days a week. Anyways, like I said, it led to more, and we started doing the nasty and stuff. Ew, just, yeah. Well, the one day after we got done doing the nasty in my mom's room, we had fell asleep. And yes, we did not have clothes on. Well, at 2 in the morning, I hear someone pounding on the bedroom door, and my mom worked night shifts. So we get up, he hurries up and gets dressed and tells me to hide under the bed. And he opens the door, and it's my mom's sister. My sister literally lived in the apartment next door. And she was like, oh yeah, neither of you were answering the phone, so she wanted me to check on you guys. Like, where's Elena? And I'm still under the bed naked, like for part 3. Part 3 about why my mom kicked me out when I was 16. So like I said, I'm laying under the bed, no clothes on. She asks where I am. And he's like, oh, she should be in her room. So he goes looking for me everywhere with her. And he's like, oh, well, maybe she's outside on the patio. And I don't know why the hell my mom's sister had a key to our apartment anyways. But she's still looking for me in the apartment, and she looks under the fucking bed. And at first she's like, oh my God, what did he do to you? And I'm trying to tell her nothing, like I made that decision on my own. So she calls my mom right away. My mom comes home. She's screaming at me and she kicks me out. So I go to my grandma's house and I told my grandma what happened. And my grandma calls her and she's like, it's not her fault that you gave her daddy issues. And I'm like, bruh, what the fuck? Child, anyways. So then she goes on Facebook and starts posting about how I'm a whore and a slut and how, like, it isn't her boyfriend's fault at all. So now story time about how I found my uncle sleeping with my best friend. So a little background information. I was 18 at the time and a freshman in college. My uncle was a National Guard and we were the same age, we went to the same school, and we also had the same friends. And while he was away, I had made one friend that he didn't know about. Her and I became best friends, we got into the same college, and we were in the same dorm room together. Well, the one day my uncle came to my college to surprise me. I ran up to him, I gave him a big hug, and my best friend was super confused because I had never introduced them. And when I introduced them, there was this weird, awkward vibe. So all three of us went back to the dorm room, and I asked her if it was okay that he spent the night, because I didn't want to be that person to just invade her space. So she ended up saying yes, and eventually we all got really hungry, and we all wanted Chick-fil-A, so I went and I left them all alone in the room together. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how I found my uncle sleeping with my best friend. So like I said, I went to go get us Chick-fil-A and I left them in the dorm all alone together. While I was waiting in line, I called them to ask what they wanted and nobody answered the phone. So I was like, okay, whatever, it's fine. They're probably just busy talking. So I low-key took a long time because I went to the grocery store to get some cookies. I was just craving them. So then I get back to the dorm room. As soon as I open the door, I see both of them unclothed on top of each other on the bed, doing the nasty. So for some reason, I had a broom and I threw it at my uncle and I went to my friend's apartment that night. And when I told my mom about it, she said that it was my fault because weirdly enough, they praised all the boys in my family. Part 2 of how my husband accidentally told me that he was cheating on me. So like I said, my dad lived 5 minutes away, so he just rushed over to my house. And we tried a few more things to get it off. We tried Windex, we tried the dental floss, none of it was working. So my dad told me that we were going to have to cut it off with pliers. So he comes over with the pliers, cuts the ring off. Well, a few days later, I had taken it to the same place that we got it to get the band fixed. Or replaced. While I was there, I decided to get it appraised, just for insurance reasons. So a few days later, I go and pick up my ring, and when I get home, I look at the appraisal. It was not the same one that I had picked out in the store. It looked exactly like it, but there was like a $20,000 price difference. So right now, I'm like, what the fuck? I'm not mad about the money part. I'm more mad that my husband lied to me. I was more upset about the fact that he had lied to me. So I had made dinner reservations for the next night, so that way I could hopefully bring up the conversation about it, like for part 3. Part 3 of how my husband accidentally told me that he was cheating on me. So like I said, I had made reservations for him and I to go out to dinner so that way I could hopefully spark up the conversation about it. So when we finally sat down, I had started up the conversation. I had told him that when I took my ring in to get it fixed, I also got it appraised. And his face immediately changed after that, but he wasn't saying anything. He was like, oh, okay, how did that go? So at this point, I was tired of beating around the bush, and I was like, why wouldn't you just tell me if we were having money troubles? And he was like, what do you mean? We're not having any money troubles. I'm fine. One thing about my husband is that he is very wealthy. And he takes pride in the fact that he is very wealthy. So obviously, me right there kind of questioning his wealth, he fucked up and told me the truth. He was like, well, I'm going to be honest with you. I accidentally gave the ring that I was supposed to give you to a girl I was seeing at the time. And I just never got around to replacing yours. So fast forward to present day, I am currently moving all of my stuff out of our house and filing for divorce. Story time about how my best friend started seeing my mom. So we're going to call my best friend Joey. Joey and I had been best friends since we were 4 years old, and my family was really close with his and vice versa. And she had always been really nice to him, of course because he was a family friend and he was my best friend. Well, one day I thought that she liked him a little bit more than she liked me. She would always ask the weirdest questions. Like, oh, is Joey single? Or what's Joey's sexuality? Like, sis had a whole ass husband. But at the time, I didn't think anything of it because I just thought that she really wanted him and I to date. But when he turned 15, things started getting a little bit weirder. Like, sometimes he would go over my house right after school, even when I wasn't there to hang out with my mother. And And usually the only time he was at the house was whenever him and I were hanging out. Well, the one day I walked in and they were both sitting on the couch talking. And when they both saw me, they acted like nothing was wrong with it. Like for part 2 about how my best friend started seeing my mom. So like I said, the one day I come home after school and they're both sitting on the couch already talking. And they look at me and say hi as if nothing was wrong with the situation. And then after that, Joey started mentioning how my mom was so hot. And I was like, yeah, no, she's pretty, but that's it. Well, the one day my mom left for work earlier than she usually does. So I messaged my dad and asked him if he wanted to hang out. So of course he said yes, and 5 hours later I came home and I go upstairs. And I'm just like hearing things from my mother's bedroom. So I go up and I open the door. And because I don't want this video to get taken down, you guys probably can guess what I saw. So I ran out of the room, ran downstairs. I start panicking. And Joey came and hugged me and said, I'm sorry, me and your mom just love each other. So I told them both they were absolutely disgusting. So then my mom starts crying and begging me to forgive her. And now I live with my dad. Story time about how somebody stole my $12,000 dog at a house party. So a little background information. I was 17 and a junior in high school. And I decided to throw a party at my house before winter break. So usually whenever I threw parties, I would always have everybody in the basement because I had a pretty big basement. There was a sliding glass door to the outside, so nobody had to go upstairs to get in or get out. And I would always lock the door to the upstairs just in case anybody decided to wander up the stairs. And because I didn't think anybody would get in upstairs, I let my dogs run around the house. So everybody who I invited showed up, and I guess that my address got leaked because a bunch of random people started showing up at my house. And it's not like I didn't have neighbors. No, I lived in a very tight cul-de-sac. So people were parking in front of my neighbors' driveways, in my neighbors' driveways. So I called my parents, and eventually I had to have my neighbors call the cops on my house party. My own party. Like for part 2.